I want to pick up on a point that something that could perhaps help us get to the not the ugly pictures, but the lovely pictures of the future. And from a couple of questions that have been coming in from you guys, people have been asking about transportation. And I think a lot of us experienced the traffic, some of the difficulties right here in Manila just on the way into the conference today. And Holger, I want to ask you about this because you talked about your work in Brazil, and it's pretty remarkable what's been happening in Curitiba, the bus rapid transit system. And it's not just that, is it? They have the cycleways, the zoning policies, and I mean, I don't know if this is correct, but I was reading that the city has one of the lowest accident rates in Brazil. Its carbon emissions per capita are 25% lower than the Brazilian urban average, 30% lower gasoline consumption, and only 10% of citizen income is spent on transport. So it's some pretty remarkable things happening there. Could that be replicated in a city like Manila?
Obviously, as I said earlier, every city is different. So what we can do is in fact look around the world, what had worked somewhere else. But then you need the analysis, the buy-in from the stakeholders on the ground. And I would say we need three things in every city to be successful. One is to really understand what is the data, where people are so currently moving from A to B and back. So what's happened currently in my city. Secondly, based on that, really understand and develop a vision. Where do I want to go with this city, and particularly in a place like Manila, which is still growing? What is my vision in terms of where do I develop what? So to create the link between urban development and transportation. And then third, coming with the right solution. And in some cities, there is a metro, and you have here part of that, but you need to provide more space and more investment towards the right and high quality transit system. But what happened in many cities, and I'm not an expert on Manila, for example, Mexico City, spent in fact 85% on their investment in 2 or 3 years ago on individual transport for just 20% of car owners. And to make even that transparent, what is currently the investment for a minority of people, and how we can then rethink with the right plan and the right vision to enable that. And I can see that there's a lot of room for improvement to do that here in Manila.
And how can you, I mean, just going from the questions that we're getting here about, you know, getting something like a bus rapid transport system, implementing something like that in Manila. Glenn, what are your thoughts on that? Is it because obviously the thing that really came out of what the Shell Scenarios team has been working on in your work with many different cities is this importance of a vision, but obviously, you know, cities are different in their geography, in their culture, in their circumstances. Something that works very nicely in Brazil, I mean, maybe it's not that solution, but something similar.
Yeah, I think some of the observations that we've been taking from the engagements that we've been having, and it's an observation we can recognize and relate to with what occurs inside our own company, and that is not to underestimate being able to articulate what that vision is. And the reason for that is that without that, it's very difficult to get alignment across various different bodies. So if you have many, and I've learned to really understand that Manila is not Manila, it's Metro Manila. There are 16 cities which actually form Metro Manila. And that brings with it a lot of relationships, a lot of various administrations. And when you talk about trying to develop a MRT system or a BRT system, by definition, you're engaging with multiple bodies. And if that alignment, if that vision is not actually aligned across all those groups, being able to implement becomes very, very difficult. So again, for us, what we do in our own company when we're actually working with with large problems with a lot of uncertainty, we spend a lot of time trying to really understand what it is that we want to achieve and then being able to put words around that. And if you get that goalpost out on the table and people buy into that, building that roadmap of those potential solutions becomes that much easier. And then once those key definable projects actually become clear, being able to allow departments and various bodies to get on with the doing becomes that much easier because people know what they're working towards. So although we use the word vision, it's actually the fundamentals behind it, the utility of that word, of that practice is actually very crucial in terms of building effective teams and actually bringing people together to enable action.
And that speaks to what Holger was saying about buy-in from stakeholders on the ground to get some, a transport initiative like the one that's worked so well in Curitiba actually off the ground, June. What are your thoughts on that, in terms of, I don't know, financing these sort of strategies? And I guess it goes back to collaboration across different sectors and businesses seeing that this is also something that is in their interest.
Yeah, we put that forward. I was team leader for the World Bank funded Metro Plan Manila in 1975. We put forward, look at 20 alternative urban transport. Of course, the first option is walking, then bicycle, then public transit. We also put forward congestion charging, 1975. Unfortunately, the time gap between concept, commitment, and completion takes 40 years, 60 years. And we may have to revisit that. And a lot have been put forward, but we really need strong political will and leadership to implement it. And also, what makes it very challenging here is we have suburban, low-density, gated communities strangulating the central business districts. So it's the change in lifestyles of our leaders of industry and government. And in Metro Manila, one project that we work on, we did a survey. We Metro Manilans, we walk only 400 meters. But if you can have a compact, higher density neighborhood, 400-meter radius, I think we would be encouraging more walkable trips rather than motorized trips. And a lot of possibilities that plans have been put forward decades ago, and we could update them with the new technologies and so on. Like good examples, Curitiba and Bogota. Yeah.
Right, so, and Glenn, just, we've got another question coming here. Again, everyone is very interested in transportation, and there's a question here about how you can apply something like carpooling in a third world country like the Philippines. The question asks where there is a huge disparity between rich and poor.
That's a tough question. I think I don't know really how to answer that. I think the only comment I could make was that change never comes easy. And the threat of change always feels as though people are sacrificing something. I remember the dialogue that was occurring in London when they were about to introduce the tax on entry into the city, and there was a lot of debate about whether it was the right thing, whether it was affordable, et cetera, et cetera. But then they did it and got on with it. And it made dramatic improvements in terms of the ability to move through the city. I think any kind of idea or concept moving forward to such as that has to be well thought through. But it's always going to have a reaction. But at the end of the day, being able to bring forward those kind of ideas and people to actually buy in, ultimately, they have to look at what could be the positives on the other side. So I don't have an answer, but I think the process is important.
Holger, you have an answer to that?
Yeah, they did that successfully in Singapore, 1974. You don't have to pay congestion charge if your car is fully filled up with passengers. 1974, yeah, Singapore, yeah. Yeah, sorry, Holger.
Holger, yeah.
So, as I said earlier, there's no one silver bullet. Can carpooling play a certain role for a specific niche group? Yeah, why not? But I think it's more, and I know that the Philippines are in fact one of the countries with a lot of entrepreneurial businesses. And so here one example we helped in India was to reinvent the rickshaw business. The rickshaw business was just one rickshaw, one owner, no safety regulations, no code of friendliness. But that is one of the transport modes in India, which is particular for women, the only opportunity to move from A to B. So here, helping with the competition, how to create a whole business around that, how we can create a fleet which allows then the purchase of cleaner vehicles, of new technology, calling a rickshaw. So here, to think about how you can build and create more the innovation within the countries. And what happened with jeepneys? Can you reform that in a way? So I think it's more to think about how to create an environment which allows the variety of different solutions to really enable that change we need.
And when we talk about these solutions and these initiatives, Holger, I wanted to get your thoughts on one of the questions coming through, financing for infrastructure. Because, of course, many cities can't raise the financing required to meet demand for infrastructure, and I guess that can be a particularly acute problem in a lot of developing cities, in emerging economies. What have you seen in the country, in the cities that you've worked with in terms of sort of creative financing mechanisms, if you like?
Well, first of all, I think for most of the cities around the world, it's actually a myth that there's not enough money for transport. It's a question of how the money is spent. And as I gave the example of Mexico City earlier, so question your city government in terms of where's the investment and how you spend it, and is the money spent wisely? So for example, working with the city of Rio, the mayor had two choices towards his Olympic bid. Should I just invest in the metro, which will take another 15 years and will just provide another 30 kilometers, or for the same money, can I invest in a bus rapid transit system for 200 kilometers in place in 5 years? So here, forcing to raise the question how the money is invested, push also for the solutions and ask for what are the costs and the benefits, and make better informed decisions. So I think that's part of it. And then to look into what is needed then to finance the operation, what are new ways of capturing so some of the investments. So here, a lot of cities in these days come up with land value capture. So by you raise the price of the land around transit hubs. So this is a huge opportunity, which also cities can gain money by further developing their system. So to enable that, and but then also really to see that if there is not enough money already there.
Glenn, you were shaking your head. Do you agree with that? Is it a case of moving money sideways sometimes? Does this come back to what your specific priorities are as a city, and that, I guess, feeds into, once again, your vision for how you want things to be?
No, very much so. I think I do agree that there is often this fear that there isn't enough money to do things. The reality is almost always that if you do not actually affect the right kinds of solutions, they ultimately end up costing you more anyway. And so it's to be able to get into that mindset about developing what are the right kind of solutions and being able to spend wisely and being creative about that. That is actually probably a longer term kind of a longer term success is going to result from that kind of process.
So we have about 1 minute left, and I wanted to, June, I wanted to come to you and actually come to you with, to look ahead, if you like, to our next panel, where we're going to focus a little bit more on businesses. And I just wanted to get one final thought from each of you on, what is the single most important thing that businesses can do to kind of, to build resilience in cities and to forge a stronger partnership with local government. June, your thoughts first.
Yeah, it's the costs and benefits. Infrastructure, like flooding, for instance. The last big floods we had, 80,000 hectares of urban land was flooded. You address that flooding, the land value appreciation will go up, and you have more areas for housing. And somebody made an estimate. $20 billion a year being lost, opportunity lost, traffic, congestion, flooding. So that's $20 billion a year, invest in infrastructure and so on. And I think looking towards the future and the Philippines, it's been forecasted that by 2050, if we address our challenges, we should be number 16th economy in the world. By 2025, number 19th. But we really have to address the challenges and good planning.
Olga, your thoughts on what more businesses can do? There is a question here about rallying multinational corporations to allocate budgets that support resilience in the midst of a global economic crisis.
It's not an easy question. One answer came to my mind by just seeing how multinationals, or some now recognizing that we need that shift and working with, using their influence with national government to get some of the policies right. So I know that Shell, just the CEO last week announced again, we need carbon pricing. And I think that would be one of the contribution, using the influence and the collaboration with national governments to set the right scene for the right decisions and business decisions in the future.
Glyn, what are your thoughts on that? Is it about, yes, coordinating with national governments and local governments, I guess, to have a sort of strategic lobbying effort?
Yeah, there is that. There's also, I want to kind of maybe expand on the question a little bit about the role of leadership as well, in terms of, I don't personally believe there is a lack of willingness from industry and various bodies that want to look for opportunities to invest. I think that is out there. There are platforms out there. I think, for me, what's actually required for that to be facilitated, it needs the right kind of structures in place, the right kind of governance, the right kind of regulation, the right kind of policy to enable that investment to be useful and actually to be focused. And that's where the role of leadership comes in. That's why we reference the role of politicians, because at the end of the day, they have to sign off on those laws and those regulations and get those proposals through their administrative systems. But I also want to leave you with another thought. When we talk about the role of the political process, let's also remember that the politicians represent the will of the people. And so it becomes incumbent on all of us, actually, if we want to actually be sharing that message on how we choose to live in the future, what we want our cities to look like, what we want our infrastructure to look like, then we all play a role in making sure that our leaders are actually got the right messages as well, and able to actually enact and enable those processes that are required to facilitate business and other opportunities to move forward.
Yeah, it's about grassroots getting engaged and people putting the right kind of pressure, I guess, on the politicians. Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Glyn, Holger, and June for that. That was great. So it's, yep. All right.